Morgue has chosen to bless us with his wisdom once again in a video entitled, "Do You Secretly Love Trump?" Trump has been in office for well over a year now, and I guess Morgue has been keeping his feelings bottled up all this time, so I'm glad he finally decided to open up and share his inner feelings and brilliant political analysis. Let's listen to this great and enlightened Hyperion master.
Do you secretly love Donald Trump?
Well, love is a strong word, but I support some of the policies he ran on. I don't agree with all of his decisions since he's been in office, and I'm sure that you're about to launch into a very intellectual and fact-based discussion about actual policy decisions, right? I look forward to your rational philosophical analysis of his positions on border security, immigration, foreign trade, the war in Syria, and much more. Please go on.
Love and lighters are those that say that everyone's truth is equally valid, and they're constantly preaching about unconditional love. Get real, they're living in a fantasy. This is the world of hate and darkness, and the love and lighters, as their constant trolling proves, are among the worst offenders. That's cosmic irony for you. The love and lighters often have the darkest shadow content. If you're a love and lighter, then you secretly love Donald Trump. Love and lighters have no self-awareness. Like Christians, they tell themselves one story and see themselves in one light, while in fact behaving in the exact opposite way.
So, I'm not exactly sure what a love and lighter is. But you seem to have no love for them and view them in a negative light. I'm not sure if you're saying that Trump supporters are love and lighters, and that maybe in contrast, anti-Trumpers are hate and darkers, but which are you? And I like what you said about people who claim to believe one thing, but then behave completely differently. It's kind of like people who claim that there's no such thing as right and wrong, and that there are no moral absolutes, but then express moral outrage at people who they judge to be wrong, right?
Christians will preach to turn the other cheek, even while they are hell-bent on extracting an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Hypocrites.
Right, because it's wrong to be a hypocrite, right? And surely the worst hypocrite is the one who condemns others for their hypocrisy while engaging in hypocrisy himself. But wait, I could swear you published a video about how there's no such thing as right and wrong. And I could swear that I made a video response to that video. Am I wrong?
The love and lighters actually preach a message of total darkness, a message of ignorance, relativism, and subjectivism, summed up by the ludicrous doctrine that everyone has their own truth, their own path. Well, if everyone has their own path and their own truth, then that means that they support Donald Trump and the Islamic State, since they are in no position to claim that anyone is wrong, if the truth is merely in the eye of the beholder.
Wow, you make a great point. I mean, if morality is subjective, for example, then there's no such thing as moral truth. And there would be no absolute basis for anyone to claim that anyone else was morally wrong. If anyone said, for example, that there's no such thing as right and wrong, then they wouldn't be in any position to say that Donald Trump is wrong, would they? And if they expressed moral outrage about Donald Trump or anyone else, that would make them hypocrites, wouldn't it? I think this is logically undeniable, and I'm glad there are rational individuals like you out there to point this out, without any hypocrisy or logical contradiction whatsoever. So I guess anyone who claims that there's no such thing as right and wrong would secretly love Donald Trump, according to your argument. So, is this a confession? Do you secretly love Donald Trump?
Yet, of course, they're too irrational to realize that. They can't think straight. When, by your own doctrine, you express your unconditional love for Donald Trump, a despicable person of absolute hate, what does love really mean? It means that you love hate, which is basically where love and light ends up. The self-styled light workers are the army of darkness, destroying the light of reason wherever they find it and replacing it with moronic, hateful, emotional hysteria.
Are you trying to confuse me? Because I'm confused. According to your own doctrine, you love Donald Trump. So are you a love and lighter? And let's just say Donald Trump is a despicable person of absolute hate. If there's no such thing as right and wrong, then what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that, Morgue? I'm trying so hard here, but my intellect just isn't on the same level as yours, and I can't figure out how to resolve the apparent logical contradiction. And are you a light worker or part of the army of darkness? If you're not part of the army of darkness, then what do you have against light workers? But according to you, the light workers are the army of darkness, so I don't guess it really matters, does it? Maybe you're saying that some people think they're on the side of light, but really they're on the side of darkness. It sounds like you think you're on the side of light, though, right? How would I know the difference? Is it that anyone who is part of the army of darkness will replace the light of reason wherever they find it with emotional hysteria? Thanks. That helps. So all I have to do to figure out which side you're on is watch your video and see whether it contains the light of reason or emotional hysteria. Got it.
Terence McKenna, much beloved by all love and lighters and New Agers, said, "The great evil that has been allowed to flourish in the absence of mathematical understanding is relativism. And what is relativism? It's the idea that there is no distinction between shit and shinola, that all ideas are somehow operating on equal footing." McKenna is 100% right, and it's the curse of the modern world. So why don't the love and lighters listen to him?
That's a good quote. I don't know why the love and lighters won't listen to him. Then again, to be fair, he calls relativism a great evil. And if you don't believe that right and wrong exist, then there's no such thing as evil. In which case, there's nothing wrong with moral relativism. In which case, he is wrong to say there is. But you said he's absolutely right, even though you say there's no such thing as absolute right and wrong. Are you just contradicting yourself on purpose in order to force me to grapple with the paradoxical nature of ultimate truth?
The internet and social media are spreading shit and shinola at an epidemic rate. The only people promoting mathematical understanding, which is to say objective absolutism and the single truth of reality, are us, the Hyperion movement. For our efforts, we get relentlessly trolled by all the subjectivists and relativists.
My head hurts. Yes, I agree. There's a lot of shit and shinola or whatever on the internet, and especially on YouTube. I'm glad you're here to push back against all that by promoting moral relativism and condemning relativism as immoral. I'm happy to find a voice of reason in the midst of this sea of irrationality. I'm very sorry to hear that you've been trolled by subjectivists and relativists who promote the evil idea that there's no such thing as right and wrong. If I come across any of these subjectivists and relativists, would I be morally justified in trolling them? Or would that be objectively wrong? I'd really appreciate your help in solving this moral dilemma.
This is satirically absurd, since all relativists and subjectivists should of course accept absolutism and objectivism as being equally valid points of view to any others, since they deny that any position is truer or falser than any other. So on what possible basis could they legitimately criticize any viewpoint at all, even that of Hitler or Trump?
Wait. Do you mean that your video, the one I'm responding to right now, is satirically absurd? Are you trolling me? This feels like that scene in Princess Bride where the guy isn't sure if the other guy wants him to drink from the other cup because he thinks his cup is poisoned, or if the other guy just wants him to think that that's what he wants him to do so that he'll drink from his own cup, which is exactly what he wanted him to do. It's like you're playing three-dimensional chess, just like Trump does with his opponents, according to Trump supporters. Okay, fine. You win. I give up, Morgue. I've met my match. You say that a moral relativist can't legitimately criticize either Trump or Hitler, who you apparently see as morally equivalent, and yet you yourself are a moral relativist who has just published a video criticizing Trump, who is the moral equivalent of Hitler. Is this your way of punishing me for criticizing your video entitled Right and Wrong Do Not Exist? If so, I swear I've learned my lesson. Just please stop tormenting my brain with this convoluted logic. I'll do anything. Just make the pain stop.
They've denied themselves the right to engage in debate and criticize anyone. Yet that's all they do. These people are entirely irrational and more or less insane. They are the people that tolerate intolerance, which means that they themselves are intolerant. The only people fighting intolerance are those that refuse to tolerate it. And that means passing judgment on every belief system, every religious, political, and philosophical system, and determining whether or not it's compatible with tolerance.
Okay. Now I'm starting to understand. I'm a little slow. Sometimes it takes me a while, but it seems like what you're saying is that tolerance is good and that intolerance is bad, even though there's no such thing as objective morality. And being tolerant of intolerance is bad because that makes us intolerant. I think I understand. So, hypothetically, a tolerant culture wouldn't tolerate an intolerant culture, right? But what if massive waves of immigrants from an intolerant culture came pouring into a very tolerant culture? What should the tolerant culture do? For example, Islam is a pretty intolerant religion, and European culture is pretty tolerant. So if I follow you, Europeans shouldn't be so tolerant that they tolerate an intolerant culture like Islam coming into their countries, right? So what should they do? Should they adopt some kind of extreme vetting process like Trump wants to do in the US? Should they build a wall to keep them out? That sounds familiar. Wait, do you secretly love Trump?
Is the Abrahamic worldview tolerant? If not, Abrahamism must be smashed to pieces.
Right. Abrahamic religions, like Islam, are intolerant. So you're definitely against tolerating Muslims coming into the country, right? Especially in massive waves. And we should be cautious of countries that are predominantly Christian too, like most South American countries, right? So if we let in any immigrants at all, they should come from largely secular Western European nations, right? So the US should close its border with Mexico. That would be a good first step, wouldn't it?
The central metaphor for today's world is the wall. Donald Trump won the US presidency by invoking this metaphor. Now here's the basic idea. The good people, the in-group, are inside the wall, while the bad people, the out-group, the other, the immigrant, the person of different race, different beliefs, different values, the foreigner, are outside the wall. The barbarians are at the gates. We must hold what we have. We must protect ourselves against the threat. This is the mentality that drove Trump's victory.
Wait, is the wall just a metaphor? I thought it was an actual thing. I thought Trump wanted to build a literal wall. It was just a metaphor the whole time? So you're saying that the wall is a metaphor for the way we categorize people as members of the in-group or the out-group, right? And if I understand you correctly, it is intolerant, and therefore morally wrong, for us to do this, even though there's no such thing as absolute morality. But it's also immoral to tolerate intolerance, at least as long as our intolerance of intolerance is directed toward Trump's intolerance of the intolerance of Islamic culture. But it's also intolerant to adopt an immigration policy that's intolerant of intolerant Islamic culture. I think I'm beginning to understand. Thank you for clearing this all up. Sometimes it's difficult for me to grasp the higher logic of Hyperianism.
Hillary Clinton had no idea what she was up against. She had two choices: to adopt her own version of the wall metaphor, or to deliver a wondrous vision of an America without the wall, with a new Promethean and Faustian psyche that transcends all barriers and reaches for the infinite. She did neither. Instead, she tediously tried to form a coalition of liberals and various outgroups against the deplorables, the wall people. She sent everyone to sleep with her worthy, sanctimonious, politically correct, liberal preaching and sermonizing. Does anyone take that garbage serious? Clinton played the happy, clappy, kumbaya card. Are you vomiting in your mouth a little? She wanted to be all things to all the politically correct. Clinton is enormously more intelligent than Trump. I mean, who isn't? But she had no ability to electrify her base, and Trump did. The Bernie Sanders campaign was Clinton's biggest clue that she was going to lose if she didn't radicalize her base. She totally failed to understand what the Sanders insurgency, led by enthusiastic millennials, signified, and she did nothing to change her campaign style and her message.
So would Hillary have been better? Do you think I should have voted for Hillary just to keep Trump out of office? It doesn't sound like you think Hillary was a great candidate, but you seem to think that Trump is worse. And so maybe it would have made sense to vote for Hillary as the lesser of two evils. So why do you think Hillary is objectively less evil than Trump? Is there any objective basis for claiming that one is more evil than the other? What would you say to someone who voted for Trump because they considered him to be the lesser of two evils? Is there any objective basis for determining which is more evil than the other? If so, then why did you publish a video claiming that there's no such thing as right and wrong? And if not, then what's your basis for criticizing Trump and Trump supporters?
The UK's former Prime Minister, Tony Blair, travels the world saying that politicians can only win from the center. Those days are long gone. The center is where you're guaranteed to lose. We've entered a new world of total polarization. When a bland liberal confronts a radical zealot, the winner is no longer the moderate. This is the age of the extremist. The world we live in today is captured best by W.B. Yeats in his dazzling poem, The Second Coming. Here are a few key lines. Things all fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Now, who's more passionate than the lunatic Trump supporters?
I don't know. Who is more passionate than Trump supporters? Anti-Trump protesters, maybe? You seem pretty passionate about Trump. And like that quote you read says, the worst are full of passionate intensity. It also says the best lack all conviction, and you're full of it. So are you the best or the worst? Either way, I respect your passionate conviction. Maybe the reason for it is that you secretly love Trump. And now I understand why. It's because you embrace the metaphor of the wall. You believe that the time of moderates is over, and that it's time for those on one extreme to build a wall between themselves and those on the other extreme, or even moderates. This is the time for building walls to divide the in-group from the out-group, and anyone who supported Trump is a member of the out-group.
They're practically frothing at the mouth. They've unleashed the blood-dimmed tide. Sieg Trump, Heil the Donald. And already they're polishing their marching jackboots, flying their Confederate battle flags, sporting their paramilitary NRA badges, and counting how many assault rifles they have for the day of the rapture when they massacre every liberal. Do you think the American Weimar Corps, codenamed Stormy Daniels, will hold back the SS divisions of the NRA?
Okay. It seems like you're the one frothing at the mouth. But I'm sure that's just because it's Trump supporters who have been smashing windows, staging violent protest of left-wing speakers on college campuses, and so on, right?
Get real, wake up. The wall is standing there right in front of you. Are you inside or outside? Are the barbarians outside the gate, or are you the barbarians? If you want to be on the side of the luminous future rather than the old dead past, then join Hyperianism.
Good for you. You've drawn a line in the sand. You've put up a massive wall and challenged your listeners to choose a side. They're either part of the in-group or part of the out-group. They're either part of the group that wants to divide one group against another group, or they're part of the group that's against that group, and there's no middle ground. You've got to keep the other group out, because they have a completely different set of values than you do, right? So, Morgue, if you and your tolerant army of love and lighters manage to gain control of a geographic territory and declare yourselves an independent and sovereign nation, you would want to keep Trump supporters out. After all, if your nation was flooded with people who held radically different views from yours, that would fundamentally transform your nation, and you would want to preserve your own values, right? But wait, in that case, what's wrong with a nation that was founded on principles of individual liberty and limited government, wanting to keep out immigrants who vote overwhelmingly in favor of restrictions on individual liberty and expansion of government powers? I know how much you hate hypocrites, so I'm sure you want to avoid hypocrisy yourself, right?
Where else could you find Yeats, McKenna, the Weimar Republic, and Stormy Daniels all referenced in one video? Get up out of your seats, become passionately intense, full of incandescent certainty. If you don't, your enemies surely will. You can't hide from life. You have to choose. So which side are you on? Make your stand and raise your banner. Show the world your true colors. Leave humanity behind and become Hyperion. Stand with us against the dark army that sees only walls and wants you to be outside their walls, or alternatively, inside the walls of their prison. Unite with us. Embark on Project Fallen Star. Freedom is not given, it's won. What are you doing to win it? My name is Morgue, and we are the Cult of Reason. Ad Astra, to the stars.
Quite a few videos on YouTube include quotes from a variety of different sources. Am I supposed to be impressed that you offer cherry-picked quotes in place of facts and rational arguments? I'm not. And didn't one of the quotes you cherry-picked say that the worst are full of passionate certainty? But now you're appealing to your followers to be full of passion and certainty. So it seems to me that you're appealing to the worst of humanity. I suppose that leaves the best with me on the other side of the wall. I can accept that. Ad Astra la vista, baby.